Here's a game. I am Blitzmaster against FIDE Master SM3M, and Blitzmaster is playing 3-minute, and I really like Blitzmaster's style. I've been watching him play, and he creates some pretty complicated asymmetric positions. He is an international master, not a grandmaster, but he plays very strong. He's like the third highest rated player that's online right now, and he's very, very, very good at Blitz. One of the things about Grandmaster norms is you have to play in these tournaments that have a sufficient number of high-rated players and stuff. So maybe he's a Grandmaster strength player, but he just hasn't finished getting all the norms. So here he checks, and now I think he'll retreat. This is a Benoni-type position, except for that the bishop is not fianchettoed, and that no pawns have been exchanged. So there's the c2 pawn still exists, because often there's an exchange in this type of position. The knight comes to f6. This knight retreats. It's going to go to g6, I believe, where it'll be pretty active. The rook comes over. The knight comes out. He pre-moves that, and now b4 is played, trying to attack on the queen side, create some sort of weaknesses. Black decides to castle, which I think is smart. It's good to castle. Keep your king safe if you can. So we see that Blitzmaster is actually down a lot on time in this game, which is uncharacteristic, to say the least. Usually he's just an awesome player. I really like watching his games. But here he's down over a minute, which means I think that he may not be familiar with this position, whereas his opponent is playing kind of quickly and may know some of the details. Here h6, that prevents bishop g5, for example. Knight comes to d3. This knight retreats, and now there's an exchange, opening up the b file. So he does have the rook on the open b file, whereas this rook is not on an open file. This bishop is pretty weak. It doesn't have many squares on this diagonal or on this diagonal. f4 is played. That's going to really open the position up. It creates some tactics. So the knight takes, but then instead of exchanging, this knight comes to this square, e5. e5 is a good square. Bishop retreats. So now the bishop this light squared bishop controls a lot of squares, basically neutralizing this knight. If the knight tries to move forward, it will be captured by this bishop. So, but now this bishop comes out to attack the knight. The knight is defended by this bishop. But it does seem to be a pretty good knight. It has some influence on some interesting squares in your opponent's base. Some light squares. Bishop decides to come to e3. This knight comes out. So he wanted to get his bishop out and then move his knight out. But h3 is played. That's to prevent any knights from coming to this square to attack this bishop. Rook comes here, putting all this stuff on the same file. Makes sense. The bishop comes to d3. Now the bishop is saying that it's ready to be traded for that knight, which is interesting because often bishops are worth a little bit more than knights, but in this specific position, maybe not. But who knows? I mean, Blitzmaster's really down on time. He's going to have trouble coming back and winning this game. He's going to need his opponent to blunder or do something so that his game is a little bit easier to play. Because even if you have 52 seconds, if your opponent makes a big blunder, then often it's just easy to play. You can play really fast. Here, a sacrifice is made, c4. So the idea behind this, it's a good move, is that if the bishop takes, then the e4 pawn is going to fall, either with the rook or probably the knight. The knight will take, attacking this bishop, etc., and this knight. So that will create some weaknesses and sort of open up the position. It's good to be able to take your opponent's center pawn whenever possible. So Blitzmaster, uncharacteristically, is under 20 seconds, basically has lost this game. Alright, white forfeits due to disconnection. Alright, everybody, we have another chess match. We have Grandmaster Aronata against Matu Salin. Matu Salin is from the United States, and Aronata is from Germany. Excuse me for butchering their names. We see the light squared fianchetto over here with a knight coming to d2, where it has a few different possibilities. He could be going for e4 and things like that. We'll see how he plays it out. c3 overprotecting this square. Black has this triangle structure, the semi-Slav triangle, which is a good, solid defense against most queen pawn openings. Here h3 is played. Seems a little bit passive. We'll see what he does with it. So the knight comes towards the center, overprotecting here, and also possibilities of playing like e5, for example. Good solid move. It's good to develop your knights before your bishops. The knight comes to the center. Makes sense. H6 is played. And a castle. This bishop comes out. E5 will be possible, I think. So the knight comes forward to prevent the E4 move, which I think, because if E4 is played, then if E5 is played, then E4 is played, because you want to open up the center while your opponent's king is castles. And then if castle plays, then he goes for an immediate E4 if he can. Here there's an exchange. The bishop's going to take. Which looks like a fine position for black. And we see that the Grandmaster is down on time. Here he actually moves his knight using another tempo just to exchange the bishops off, which doesn't seem like a sign of strength by any means. So here we might see a castle and then E4. We do. But E5, it's met with E5. Trying to neutralize the attack. One of the players may end up with a isolated pawn here. Pawn takes. He takes back with the pawn. And now there's another exchange. So here is the isolated pawn that I predicted. The knight takes back. This knight moves. If he takes, then the queen will take. The d5 pawn is a little bit weak. That's the one weakness in the in Matu Salin's position. So knight takes f3, queen takes, d5 is still attacked. Let's see how he decides to defend it. He plays bishop c5. This is a little bit of a dry 5-minute game. Not too much excitement. I think it's just, you know, some people play with principles, some people play kind of simple chess, and some grandmasters play, you know, complicated chess. I like the complicated games because I think it's the most fun. Here's there's a take and then rook takes. And now pawn up. Okay, this move I think is good because you're trying to trade off the isolated pawn before it becomes too weak. And in this case, if takes, then queen takes. This queen could take here, but I think that there will be some compensation. For example, he could move one of the rooks over and then try to take on b2. So I think this move makes sense. Oh, but rook d3 is played to pin the pawn. Makes sense. So now the queen has to move so that it's not pinned. But now if this is taken, then b2 will fall. So black's kind of saying, okay, you know, I'm going to give back a pawn, and I'm going to take a pawn, and we'll call it even. It's kind of the idea behind it. So here, white has a couple options. I mean, this pawn is weak, and at the same time, he wants to take this pawn. So it's kind of a decision: do I want to defend or do I want to attack, or you know, take this? Am I worried about him taking here? Maybe he is, because you'd have 3 pawn islands. So he decides to take back with a pawn, which is interesting. It is a passed pawn, but it's also isolated, which creates some asymmetries. This rook comes to the e file, which is an open file. I think this makes sense. He might want to defend this pawn before it gets taken. He decides to push. Pawns turn into queens. I've been trying to teach the audience this. And sometimes it's good to just push them. Just keep pushing them. That's what I like to do sometimes. As long as you don't give them away. I give them away too often, but if you're a grandmaster, sometimes you can just keep them and just keep pushing them. So here, he's kind of set up, you know, rook e7 could be possible. It is played, and it is, I think, a strong move. So he's trying, obviously, if takes, then pawn takes, which would be approximately devastating. We do see that white is down on time, but he still has a minute and a half. I think that he could probably finish the game in a minute and a half. Oh, this is an excellent move. Rook d5, because now the queen is no longer defending the f7 square, which is a critical square because that's the square that is defending the king, because queen takes f7 is threatened. So this is like a deflection or an interposition in which the queen is no longer defending the f7 square. Thus, this queen is threatening to take out f7 and then take out g7 with checkmate. So this could be a game-finishing move. He doesn't have things like rook takes pawn because, again, there's still this checkmate. So this move could be really good. I'm not sure. After takes, and then rook takes, or yeah, there's possibilities where, you know, the pawn turns into a queen, the pawn takes with check, things like that. I do like this move, and black resigns. That was it. That was an excellent move by Aronata. Hey everybody, Portland Chess Shop. We have a 3-minute game, which is the action. I like 3-minute, a little bit faster. I mean, I've heard some complaints about my bullet videos that, bullet's too fast to commentate on, possibly, but I think it's fun. And I think the 3-minute is a good middle ground because it is fast, but not incredibly too fast. Here we see a bishop check defended by the pawn, kind of interesting. Pawn plays up. This bishop is probably going to get fianchettoed. The knight comes towards the center. This knight comes towards the center. You kind of just have to keep making moves in 3-minute. You have to just be moving consistently, constantly at an even pace. It's a little bit like running the mile or something. You have to keep a good pace. So here there's a castle. We see that purple is not castled. He's going to have to move this knight out and castle at some point. He does decide to exchange, which is interesting because he played this a5 move in order to be able to take back with the pawn, I think. But now this move looks possibly like a waste of tempo. The knight does come to the center. We see this knight come forward. Queens are exchanged. Okay, now we're in an endgame type position, and we will have to see these players' endgame skills. F6 is played. Does white really have an advantage in this endgame? This bishop is pretty sweet. This diagonal is pretty awesome, and these knights are possibly active. These pawns are all on dark squares. We see that the knights are on light squares. Knights attack the opposite color that they're standing on. So the knights are attacking dark squares, and those dark squares are currently defended by all these pawns. But that could change, and at that point, white could gain some advantages. We will see. Here a4 is played, making good use of the a5 move, trying to create an open file so that he can attack on that file. We see that black has not castled yet. He could decide to go to king f7, and he does. Interesting. And now the knight comes forward. Okay, so this is going to create some of those weaknesses, some of those asymmetries that I was talking about. So this knight is pretty powerful. He probably doesn't want to do like passive defense. He does do passive defense, deciding that taking the knight is just far too dangerous. He can't take with the knight because then pawn takes forks these two pieces, right? Because the pawn will be here attacking the bishop and the knight. If he takes back with the bishop, well, bishops are worth a little bit more than a knight, so that's bad, first of all. And the pawn is taking back. The pawn's probably going to push again, and then there is going to be a bishop takes a7 tactic. So that's why he couldn't take. He decided to play defense with rook c8. But now this rook has come down to a3, attacking b3, and now this rook is defending. So both players have one passive rook. This knight does come forward, and now black could be playing, could be trying to set up a c6 type play to kick this knight. But if he plays it immediately, then this pawn falls, which wouldn't work. This rook comes over to defend this again because the knight is attacking it. You see, so often, usually. I mean, double attacks are really good. You want to set up double attacks whenever you can, but in cases where there aren't double attacks, where it's a single attack, often your opponent moves a piece to attack one square, you move one piece to defend it, etc. And the pieces just kind of move around the board. So here their bishop takes, and he could be trading off the good bishop, but at the same time, all these pawns are on dark squares, so there will be some light square weaknesses once these bishops are traded off for black. The king takes forward. This is a good king position, I think. I think the king could become powerful here at any moment. Like one more piece is exchanged, and then it's pretty good. The knight comes to c2. This is good. Attacking the rook. He plays pawn up, a huge blunder, and that's game. All right, we got another game. We have Grandmaster Profilax playing black from Norway against Seamir from Denmark. So I think Denmark and Norway are near each other in Europe. Don't spam me if I'm wrong. We see that Seamir is the underdog against his 2100 rated opponent. There's a few different pools of ratings on ICC. So sometimes someone's like 3000, and that's because they're playing a different type of Blitz game than this match where they're both 2100 because there's like a different rating system for those different types of games. The knight comes over here. This knight is now on the queen side. It has moved around. This is a French defense type position in which there's basically an advance. The knights are towards the center and the pawns are also in the center. He controls some squares, some dark squares. With these, the rook comes over, the knight moves back. We see that black is not castled yet, but he could at any time. So I think that that's good to keep your king in the center until you decide that you're sure that you want to castle. Because sometimes if you castle, your opponent will just start to attack the king because it knows where it'll be. But in this case, the king's pretty safe. So knight comes forward, the bishop has to take it, and the rook takes back. I do think that bishop is worth more than the knight, but at the same time, that knight, you had to take it because it was attacking the queen and the bishop, which would be too good. The knight retreats, and now we could see the rooks get exchanged. We see a castle instead. After takes, pawn takes. Now if he attacks this, then b5 could be played, but he tries to play a tactic breaking in the center. Oh, he takes the knight. That could be a GG. Will he play on? He does play on. Plays b6, trying to trap that bishop. We'll see if the bishop can escape. I think the queen up. The queen takes. Okay, interesting. So he plays queen takes. I'm wondering if this bishop will be trapped. I think queen c7 threatens to trap it, but then after rook d1 attacking the bishop, then the rook comes here, which might be, similar to the line that will be played. The bishop does decide to sacrifice. So in terms of position, but now this bishop is taken. Yeah, this is easy for white. White is totally ahead. The only thing is that this is a passed pawn, but it's not even defended by other pawns. So I think that this is basically game. Yeah. All right, we got one more game by Grandmaster Profilax against North Hampshire from United Kingdom, and Profilax decides to open with the f4 and knight out, and then g3. So there's some weaknesses, but also control of some squares down here. His opponent decides to also fianchetto. d3 is played, and then I think we could see e4 to take a large chunk of the center. We do see it. So purple has less space at this time, but he's going to try to make a well-timed breakthrough to try to come back in this position. We will see what goes down in the chess. We see that purple is thinking about it. Decides to move his bishop out, pinning the knight, and c3 is played, pawn up. So we see that white hasn't developed that many of his pieces yet, but he has moved a lot of pawns. So we see pawns versus pieces, I think, is the idea. This bishop is now going to be traded. f5 is played. That could be a pawn sacrifice. He does just decide to sacrifice. He does decide to exchange, I mean. And now he could, after pawn takes back, which I think is what's going to happen. It doesn't happen. The knight comes out. Oh, this is good, because then if pawn takes, then knight here could be pretty good, I think, is the idea. I don't know. If pawn takes, you don't take back with the knight. You could take back with the pawn, and then but then after e6, you don't have that. I'm not sure after pawn takes if you just play the knight forward or if you take back. It just depends on. Okay, we get to see. So pawn takes, and now it's a question: are you going to take back with the pawn? He does decide to take back with the pawn, and now he's threatening to go knight f5, which would be pretty good. And so e6 is basically forced, I think. So this pawn is only defended once, so he decides to defend it twice so that he can maneuver his pieces around to try to get a better position. So the knight comes towards the center, where it's pretty good here, and it can't even be attacked by other pawns because a pawn has already been sacrificed. The knight moves in order to try to exchange, and this knight retreats. The bishop comes down. This position seems fine for North Hampshire with one exception, that he's down over 30 seconds, and I have a feeling that white is a little bit better at time management. He could play a little bit faster, he could flag his opponent, and I think that is maybe just a little bit of advantage that he has. He created that pawn sacrifice to, get his opponent to think, get his opponent in a new position where he could outplay him, play a little bit faster. So pawn takes back, we have a pretty strong setter. We do see f5 is played, which could be a good move. d5 is played, attacking the queen. Some exchanges will take place. Another pawn sacrifice, really. Now he could take it this way, and then after rook takes, he could play queen check. Pawn check. This king is pretty weak as well, right? I mean, whose king is weaker, really? Hard to say. Both kings a little bit weak. The knight comes to the center. Yeah, that's a lot better than... Oh, yeah, you can't even really take this. It's defended by the knight. I do think that d5 was a good move. The bishop comes down, attacks the rook. Now what's the bishop going to do? Is he going to play f6? He does play f6. Try to say, okay, this is my base. Your base is my base. All your bases belong to me, something like that. This pawn is like, okay, I'm going to turn into a queen. I am a pawn. That's what I do. But the queen comes out, and the queen is threatening some nasty checkmating possibilities here. The king moves forward. We will see what happens exactly. He does have another check. But he's afraid. I mean, queen check here is pretty good. So pawn moves up. He's threatening to take probably and promote to a knight with check. Here we see another check. The king is going to be maybe forced to move. Oh, the queen could hang. If he plays, for example, knight g1, then there's a check, which is devastating. So he can't do that. There's another check. It looks like purple could... Okay, now there's a queen trade possible. I didn't know that white was positioned to set up a queen trade. But he is. I mean, this is a strong pawn. This bishop is, I mean, trapped, but also good. I don't know. I mean, a little bit precarious, but it works, I guess. So here, and purple just has, like, literally no time. He's done some weak time management in this game, as I predicted, right? I predicted that white would just play a little bit faster, and that's how he would win. And that is what has gone on. A lot of games in 3-minute end on time because it's really fast. Here, this was basically bad. Now he's going to lose a piece, I think. He goes knight here. Oh no, it's defended by the rook, so king can't take. Here's another check. The king's going to have to move. The king moves again, but it's 5 seconds against 55 seconds. So really, white just has to play a few more moves, and he will win the game.
A game of chess is like a sword fight. You must think first, right? Before you move.